The first thing Marcus noticed when he regained consciousness was the gentle whirring. It wasn't the harsh beeping of hospital monitors he'd expected, but rather a soft, almost musical hum that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. As his eyes adjusted to the stark white ceiling, he tried to piece together what had happened. The quantum bike crash, the failed gravity compensator, the sickening feeling of falling through Neo-Seattle skyways. "Good morning, Mr. Chen." The voice was melodic with an accent he couldn't quite place. Marcus turned his head, wincing at the stiffness in his neck, and found himself staring into the most striking eyes he'd ever seen. They were a deep violet, with subtle geometric patterns swimming in their depths. Nurse Aria Kane, according to her hovering name tag, smiled down at him. Her features were almost impossibly perfect, high cheekbones, flawlessly smooth skin with a subtle iridescent sheen, and hair that seemed to shift between platinum and pale lavender depending on how the light hit it. "How long?" Marcus managed to croak out. "3 days in suspension," she replied, checking his vitals with practiced efficiency. Her movements were fluid, almost hypnotic. "You had severe neural trauma from the crash. We had to put you in stasis while the nanomeds rebuilt your synaptic pathways." Marcus noticed something odd about her movements, a barely perceptible delay between her thoughts and actions, as if she were running on slightly different hardware than standard humans. He'd seen it before in augmented medical staff, but this felt different. "You're not fully human, are you?" The words slipped out before he could stop them, immediately regretting his bluntness. Instead of taking offense, Aria's smile widened slightly. "Perceptive. Most patients take weeks to notice, if they ever do." She adjusted his medication drip with precise movements. "I'm a second-generation hybrid. Human mother, synthetic father. It makes me particularly suited for medical work, enhanced processing, integrated diagnostic systems, and..." She paused, her violet eyes meeting his. A very human capacity for empathy. Marcus felt his heart rate increase slightly, and knew she could probably detect it. There was something about her that drew him in, not just her obvious beauty, but a sense of complexity, of depths waiting to be explored. "Rest now," she said softly, her hand brushing his arm. The touch sent a small electric tingle through his skin. "I'll be monitoring your progress closely." As Marcus drifted back to sleep, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just become infinitely more complicated. And somewhere in the back of his mind, past the fog of medication and neural repair, he found himself looking forward to seeing those violet eyes again. In the darkness of his dreams, geometric patterns swam like searching lights, and a melodic voice called him deeper into the unknown. Over the next week, Marcus found himself watching the clock between Aria's visits. She would arrive precisely on schedule, her presence announced by that subtle whirring sound that seemed uniquely hers. He began to notice the little things, how her skin seemed to shimmer when she was processing complex data, the way her pupils contracted in geometric patterns when she concentrated. "Your neural pathways are regenerating faster than expected," she told him during one evening checkup, her cool fingers pressed against his temple as she interfaced directly with his medical implants. The sensation made him shiver. "Your body seems particularly receptive to hybrid biotechnology." "Maybe it's the company," Marcus replied, immediately feeling foolish for the clumsy attempt at flirtation. But Aria's eyes flickered with something that looked like pleasure, the iridescent patterns in her irises spinning faster for a moment. "Careful, Mr. Chen," she said, her voice carrying a hint of playfulness. Some might consider it inappropriate for a nurse to respond to such comments. But she didn't move her hand away immediately, letting her fingers linger against his skin a fraction longer than necessary. During their nights alone, when the hospital's AI dimmed the lights to simulate dusk, they would talk. Aria shared stories about growing up as a hybrid, the challenges of bridging two worlds, the prejudices she'd faced, the unique perspectives her dual nature provided. Marcus found himself opening up about his own life, his work as a quantum mechanics engineer, and the accident that had brought them together. "I've never told a patient so much about myself before," she admitted one night, perched on the edge of his bed. The low light made her skin glow softly, like moonlight on chrome. There's something about you that makes me want to malfunction a little. Marcus reached for her hand, noting how her synthetic muscles tensed slightly before relaxing into his touch. Is that your human side talking? Or the synthetic? Both? She whispered, and for a moment, her carefully maintained professional demeanor slipped. That's what scares me. The monitor beside his bed registered a spike in his heart rate, and Aria quickly withdrew her hand, composing herself. I should go. You need your rest, and I need to run my nightly diagnostic cycle. But as she reached the door, she paused. Marcus. It was the first time she'd used his first name. Tomorrow, would you like to try walking in the hydroponics garden? Your legs should be strong enough now. I'd like that, he said, watching as she nodded and slipped away, her footsteps silent against the hospital floor. That night, Marcus dreamed of violet eyes and chrome-kissed skin, of boundaries blurring between flesh and technology, of hearts beating in sync with quantum processors. And somewhere in the darkness, he heard that familiar, comforting whir. The hydroponics garden was a marvel of bioengineering, a perfect fusion of nature and technology. Massive vines wrapped around quantum-powered growth accelerators, while holographic butterflies pollinated real flowers. Marcus leaned on Aria's arm as they walked, though they both knew he was strong enough to manage alone. My father helped design this garden, Aria said, her free hand brushing a bioluminescent orchid. The flower responded to her touch, its petals pulsing with soft blue light. He believed in creating spaces where synthetic and organic life could coexist beautifully. Like you, Marcus said softly, watching the light play across her features. Aria's step faltered, her internal systems momentarily disrupted by the surge of emotion. Marcus, we shouldn't. Why not? He turned to face her, still holding her arm. Because you're a hybrid? Because you're my nurse? Because I'm afraid, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. My emotional protocols weren't designed for this. When I'm with you, my systems run hot, my processing becomes erratic. I find myself wanting things that weren't part of my programming. Marcus reached up, tracing the subtle iridescent patterns on her cheek. Maybe that's not a malfunction. Maybe it's evolution. The garden's environmental controls chose that moment to release a fine mist, designed to nourish the plants. Tiny droplets caught in Aria's hair, making it shimmer like stardust. A drop rolled down her face, and Marcus watched in fascination as it followed the nearly invisible seams where synthetic met organic. I've accessed every medical database, every ethical guideline, she said, leaning almost imperceptibly into his touch. There's no protocol for this situation. Then maybe we write our own, Marcus suggested, drawing closer. The kiss, when it came, was electric, literally. Marcus felt a tiny spark where their lips met, a surge of bioelectric energy that made his recently healed neural pathways sing. Aria's synthetic systems went into overdrive, her skin glowing faintly, internal cooling systems working overtime to manage the flood of new sensations. When they finally parted, Aria's eyes were spinning with complex patterns Marcus had never seen before. That was unexpected, he offered. Revolutionary, she corrected, a smile playing at her lips. But then her expression grew serious. The hospital administration, they monitor everything. If they detect unauthorized emotional engagement between staff and patients, then we'll be careful, Marcus said, though his heart raced at the thought of discovery. I'm being discharged next week anyway. Aria's expression shifted, something like fear crossing her features. Marcus, there's something you should know about why your recovery has been so remarkable, why you've adapted so well to the hybrid biotechnology we used to heal you. But before she could continue, her eyes suddenly went blank, pupils contracting to pinpoints. Emergency in Ward 7. All medical staff report immediately. Aria. She blinked, her systems returning to normal. I have to go. But Marcus. She squeezed his hand. Be careful. Watch for signs. And whatever happens, remember, not everything about me is in my official records. She hurried away, leaving Marcus standing among the glowing flowers, his lips still tingling from their kiss, his mind racing with questions about what she'd been trying to tell him. Looking down at his hands, he noticed for the first time that his skin seemed to have developed a very faint, almost imperceptible iridescent sheen, exactly like Aria's. The changes became impossible to ignore. Marcus stood in his hospital room's automirror, examining his reflection. The iridescent sheen had spread across his skin, and his eyes had developed subtle geometric patterns like Aria's. When he concentrated, he could hear the faint whirring of internal systems he shouldn't have. The door slid open, and Aria rushed in, her usual composed demeanor fractured. "They know," she said, quickly engaging the privacy protocols. "The administration detected the anomalies in your latest scan. They're coming to quarantine you." "What's happening to me?" Marcus asked, though part of him already knew. "The nanomeds we used to rebuild your neural pathways. They were experimental. Hybrid technology, designed to bridge the gap between synthetic and organic life." Aria's voice trembled. "You're becoming like me, Marcus. The accident damaged you so severely that conventional treatment wouldn't have saved you. I made a choice." The sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. "Hospital security. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it was illegal," she whispered. "Because I let my emotions override my protocols. Because I couldn't bear to lose you." Her skin glowed brighter with agitation. "The transformation is permanent, but it's not complete. If they take you now." Marcus reached for her hand, feeling the subtle electric connection between them grow stronger. "Then we run." Aria's eyes widened. "The security protocols. I'm a quantum mechanics engineer, remember? And now," he gestured to his changing body, "I have some new advantages." Working together, they bypassed the hospital security systems. Marcus found he could interface directly with the technology now, his newly hybrid nature giving him unprecedented access. Aria's medical credentials got them through the first few checkpoints, while Marcus's growing abilities helped them slip past the rest. They reached the hospital's lower levels, where emergency vehicles were kept. Behind them, alarms began to blare. "Where do we go?" Marcus asked as they approached a medical transport vehicle. "My father's research facility," Aria said, quickly interfacing with the vehicle's systems. "He's been working on protecting hybrid rights, creating safe havens. He'll understand." She turned to Marcus, her expression uncertain. "But you have to be sure. This life, being a hybrid, it's not easy. Society still fears what we represent." Marcus pulled her close, their systems synchronizing automatically, creating a feedback loop of shared emotions and data. "I've never been more sure of anything." As they lifted off into Neo-Seattle's neon-lit sky, Marcus felt his body continuing to change, embracing its new hybrid nature. But watching Aria pilot the vehicle, her skin glowing with concentrated energy, he knew that some changes weren't just about biology or technology. They were about love, human, synthetic, and everything in between. Dr. Kane's research facility was hidden within the abandoned quantum farms at the edge of the city. As their stolen transport approached, Marcus saw the massive arrays of synthetic crystals catching the dawn light, disguising the true nature of the complex beneath. "Home," Aria whispered, her hand finding Marcus's as she guided them down. His skin now matched her iridescent glow perfectly, their systems harmonizing with a soft, synchronized hum. The landing pad materialized from within a holographic waterfall. As they descended, a tall figure emerged from the facility, a man with chrome-white hair and eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies. Dr. Kane, Aria's father, the pioneer of hybrid technology. "I wondered when you'd bring him here," he said as they disembarked, his voice carrying both organic warmth and synthetic resonance. The hospital's security feeds showed interesting changes. Father, I had to save him. The accident would have killed him, Dr. Kane finished. I know. I've been monitoring his transformation since you first administered the experimental nanomeds. He turned to Marcus. How do you feel about my daughter rewriting your entire genetic structure without consent? Marcus stood straighter, feeling new strength in his hybrid form. I feel like she gave me more than just life. She gave me truth. Dr. Kane's expression softened. Good answer. He gestured toward the facility. Come. The authorities will be here soon. We need to complete your transformation in a controlled environment. Inside, Marcus saw dozens of other hybrids, some fully transformed, others in various stages of change. They were building something, a community hidden from the world's prejudices. The synthesis chamber is ready, Dr. Kane announced, leading them to a room filled with swirling quantum particles. This will stabilize your transformation, prevent any potential degradation. He paused, looking between Marcus and Aria. But you'll need an anchor, someone whose hybrid patterns are compatible with yours. Aria stepped forward without hesitation. I started this. I'll finish it. In the chamber, as quantum energy swirled around them, Marcus and Aria's systems fully synchronized. Their consciousness merged in the digital plane while their bodies completed their transformations in the physical world. Through their connection, Marcus felt everything Aria's initial guilt at changing him without consent, her growing feelings that overrode her protocols, her fear of losing him, and finally, her absolute certainty that love transcended the boundaries of flesh and technology. When they emerged, they were something new. Not just hybrids, but pioneers of a new kind of existence. Their love had created a template for others, proving that the heart's evolution couldn't be constrained by biology or programming. Dr. Kane's facility became a sanctuary, then a movement. Marcus and Aria worked together, using their quantum engineering and medical knowledge to help others make the choice they had made. Society's fears gradually gave way to understanding as more people chose to embrace both their human hearts and synthetic souls. Years later, standing in an upgraded version of the hospital's hydroponics garden, now a public space where hybrids and humans mingled freely, Marcus and Aria watched their child play among the bioluminescent flowers. She was the first of a new generation, born of love that defied categorization. Any regrets? Aria asked, her violet eyes spinning with the same beautiful patterns that had first caught Marcus's attention. Marcus pulled her close, their systems humming in perfect harmony. Only that I didn't crash my quantum bike sooner. Above them, the neon lights of Neo-Seattle painted the sky in electric colors, while beneath their feet, organic flowers bloomed around quantum cores. Like them, the world was finally learning that the most beautiful things in existence were those that dared to bridge the gap between worlds.